told Walt having two shaky jakes up here tonight. Before I forget, I want to thank the committee for asking me here to speak, because I really feel it's an honor and a privilege. I always feel that I don't want to say not qualified to be here, because I am, but I always feel that I'm not one to get up here. I'm really not a speaker. But I believe in AA you don't have to be a speaker. We're not up here running a contest to see who can outdo who. At least I'm not. And I always feel it's awful hard, I think, for a gal to get up here and talk and undress herself if she's going to be honest and tell it like it was. My name is Polly Chafee, and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Polly.
And I'm very grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. The big book says to tell what it was like and what happened, what it's like now. I tell things mixed up, because that's the way I drink mixed up. It's very hard for me to remember dates and times other than a few of them. And I'm not proud of the things that happened to me when I was drinking. But I think each and every one of us has to go down our own road. And I believe I had to go down mine in order to be where I am today. I was a barroom drinker. And I really don't have to say any more than that. You know, I like the bright lights and the dim lights and the bands playing, and I'd be in the middle of all the mess playing Movie Star. I was a daily drinker. I never knew what social drinking was. Now, I would be sociable if you had a bottle. I started drinking when I was 15 years old. I believe I was an alcoholic the first time I ever took a drink. I got drunk the first time I ever took a drink and got drunk the last time I took a drink. I believe that my mother was alcoholic. I'm from a small town, Annapolis, Maryland. I always say Maryland people, my people. And I got sober in Annapolis, Maryland. But I can remember the first time I took a drink, I was looking for whatever it was that I'd seen in my mother when she was drinking and all her drunken friends. And it was like I discovered the magic to life. Because I was comfortable around people and I felt equal to people. And like I said, I could go running around playing Movie Star. And I used to hang with a pretty rough crowd in Annapolis, an older crowd. I got married when I was 15. I quit school, grammar school. And it took me 15 years to get through the 7th grade. My husband said he'd never heard anybody failed in the 1st grade. Well, I failed in the 1st and 3rd. And I married a guy, came back from the war from Annapolis. He was 10 years older than I was. And he died on my 16th birthday. I was married 6 or 7 months, and his sister gave me my first drink of whiskey, I remember, and I got so stoned that I couldn't even go to the funeral parlor that day. And that was the beginning. And like I said, I hung with a rough crowd, and most of these people had been in jail. And it was like I was missing something. And I can remember when I was 17 years old, I got arrested for drunken disorder. I always got arrested for drunken disorderly, drunken using profanity, and sometimes just drunk. And I got out, and I remember going up and down the streets in Annapolis telling everybody, did you know I was in the Hooscow last night? It was like I was proud of it, and I felt part of the game. Well, then it got so it wasn't so funny. the police in Annapolis used to make a bet, you know, which one was going to get me first. And this made me feel important. Sometimes I used to think after I got into the program and got sober, I think the police department drove me more in AA than my drinking. I had blackouts right from the beginning. I would do anything that came to my mind when I was drinking. It was like once I took a drink, I just couldn't guarantee my actions. I would get out on the highway hitchhiking, and this was back in the days when we don't see too many women out hitchhiking. And hitchhiked to Baltimore and get drunk. And I remember one time I was up in Baltimore on a drunk, and I never did drink high class, but I would start out middle class and end up bottom class. And I remember I ended up down on the waterfront. And I went into this dive, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to drink out of their dirty, filthy glasses. And I told the bartender this, because, see, it made me feel I wasn't as bad as the rest of the people in that place. And I was just as bad, if not worse, than some of them. I always felt that I was dealt a poor, bad deck of cards for life. I believed that my role in life was just to drink and die drunk. I could never understand why I was ever put on this earth. I would be in these places drinking and come to, and I'd be somewhere else, wouldn't remember how I got there. A lot of times when I would wake up in the mornings, and I would jump up real fast to see if I was in jail or at my mother's. And if I was lucky enough to be at my mother's, I would get a sigh of relief, and I'd think, well, I outsmarted them last night. I hope I'm lucky enough to take the same route tonight. Because there was never no doubt in my mind if they seen me, they were going to get me. I decided, well, maybe if I left Annapolis and went to a different place where nobody knows me, maybe things would be different for me. So I went to Washington, D.C., because there you only had to be 18 to drink beer. Only one drink booze, or liquor. And I got up in Washington, found out they had bigger jails, more policemen, you know, same mess. And up there, they used to, back then, they'd lock a gal up, take you to women's bureaus. They didn't have all these classy places you got now for drunk. In my day, you went 2 places, state hospital or jail. That's what they did with us. And I got locked up in Washington. And the judge evidently felt sorry for me, and he put me on probation for 6 months. And I was living with this gal, and because when you start getting arrested, you learn things. Just like when you're out there in them bars, if you're a woman, you're going to get tough to survive. I did. And one of the first things I learned is if police get you, you don't give your right name. So I used to tell Hazel, now, if you get a call from the Women's Bureau tonight and it's such and such a name, it's me. Come and get me. And no matter how drunk I'd get, I'd rehearse his name all night long. And I got away with it a couple times. Well, the third time I didn't get away with it. And I had to go back before the judge, and I remember saying these are times that I would think of God. And I remember saying a prayer, God, please don't let this judge give me over 20 days. Because, you know, when you're used to doing 30, 60, 90, 20 isn't so bad. And I went before him, and this is exactly what he gave me, 20 days. And it was right before Christmas. And I walked out of there, and I thought, oh, hell, I'd probably got that anyway. And back then, if you got over 10 days, they sent you to Occoquan, Virginia. And this was my first experience going to a prison. And some of you probably remember who she is, actually Sally. I met her there, and I thought I was meeting a movie star. I went to Aquan, Virginia, and I did my little 20 days. And what they used to do back then, they'd bring you back into Washington on a bus, and on each side of the bus would be Aquan, Virginia. And they would let you off right in the middle of Washington, and when you got off that bus, everybody knew where you just come from. And it was the same mess over and over again. And I just couldn't understand why these things were happening to me. It never dawned on me that it was my drinking caused it. I blamed people, places, and things. If people, places, and things were different, then I wouldn't drink so much. If I had this, had that, then I wouldn't have to drink so much. Well, I went back to Annapolis, and like I said, it was the same thing over and over and over again. I had a judge say to me in Annapolis that he wished he could give me life in the penitentiary because I was a disgrace to be on the street. I think somebody said last night that when they were drinking, too many people didn't hear of them. Well, they sure heard of me. If you didn't know me, you heard about me. And it's sort of the same thing in AA now, but it's a lot different. And I really felt the police department was out to get me. When I was 20 years old, and they had locked me up, charged me with habitual drunkenness, which means you're drunk all the time. And they gave me 2 years at the Women's State Reformatory, Jessup, Maryland. And that judge could have said life to me. It wouldn't have affected me any different. And I thought, my God, I got to go 2 years without a drink. And this was December the 19th, 1950. I went up to Jessup, and this is where I was introduced to AA. There was a woman from Annapolis, Marty, who's dead now. Used to come up there every Saturday morning putting meetings on. And I used to see the girls every Saturday morning going over the office, and I got inquisitive. And they told me there was some woman come up there talking to them about AA. I'd never heard about AA. And that we were only allowed 4 cigarettes a day, and Marty put a pack of cigarettes on the table and brought a coat. And I thought, well, it'll be something different. And she said, and they said, all you got to do, Polly, is just write Miss Bloom a note, tell you you'd like to attend these AA meetings. So this is what I did. And this is where the seed was planted. And I started attending the meetings there at Jessup. One time when I was in Jacksonville, Florida, this guy said to me, you know, Polly, if I were you, when I get up and talk, I wouldn't mention the jails and all because, you know, somebody may get the wrong idea. And I said, well, I don't know where you started from, but I had good basic training in this program. And one of the first things I had to do was get honest. So I couldn't make out that I got sober in the White House when I didn't. And I thought, well, this is the way, you know, to help me out on my parole. And in 9 months, I was paroled to work at Shepherd Pratt Hospital in Towson, Maryland, as attendant, and I should have been a patient. Now, back then, you didn't see any young people around AA. I think the youngest gal of the Towson group was around 38 years old. And she'd come over and get me once a week and take me over to the meeting house, and I would sit there in the meetings and I would think. Now, when I get looking like these, I'm going to join this outfit. And, you know, if I'm unlucky and not able to find a husband and all this stuff, then maybe they can help me. I looked on AA as old folks' home. And, of course, I didn't stay sober. And I got drunk, and I remember one night one morning got off from duty, and I went out and bought me a fifth and went back to the hospital because I lived at the hospital. And I started drinking. And I had the radio on, and the drunker I got, the louder the music got, and all the night people started complaining, and I proceeded to go out in the hall and cuss them all out. And they called the superintendent of the hospital. And of course he called my parole officer, and the next thing I knew, that door flew open, and there he stood. And he said, "Polly, I want you to get dressed because I'm taking you back to Jessup." I said, "I don't care where you're taking me, but I'm not going anywhere to finish my bottle. And I would appreciate if you wait outside my room." See, these kind of things always made me feel important doing this kind of stuff. It's like when I would get locked up in Annapolis. I used to say 52 Calvert Street was my second home. And they used to I knew they had to have a matron to search you. So I'd always stick a half a pint on top of my dress, and they'd get me down to the police station, and they would say, "Polly, give us your bottle." I'd say, "I haven't got a bottle." They'd say, "We know you got a bottle." I said, "I dare you go in my clothes." So they'd just take me back and put me in the cell. And when I'd finish my bottle, I'd rattle it on the bars, and they'd come back, and I'd say, "Would you throw this away, please?" And you know, this was my way of getting back at them, showing them who's boss. Well, my parole officer took me back to Jessup, and I stayed 6 months. And I was back there a month when my parole officer came to see me, and I was so ashamed to go over to see him because, you see, I had threw up in his car, and that isn't all I did in his car. And he came to see me, and I was really ashamed to have to go there and face this man. And he told me, you know, they were just going to leave me at Jessup till I got straightened out, and they were going to let me out again on parole. And I couldn't believe this because gals that I met there that broke parole didn't get out the second time. But I did. This time they paroled me up in Hagerstown. This woman had a 22-room house. She was an elderly woman, and she needed a companion. And like I said, she had a 22-room house, and she put me up in the attic. So you know how long I lasted there. Long enough to talk my parole officer and let me go back to Annapolis. And of course I got back there and got drinking, and I didn't have to tell anybody I was on parole. We all knew it, and plus the headquarters for the parole board was there. And I go back to Jessup again, and I don't know, I had a 2-year sentence, and it took me 2 years to do the 2 years on the installment plan. But when I would go back, I would always go over to attend the meetings again. In 1953, I got out in, I got out in 52, December the 19th, but in 53, I met my husband, who I'm married to now, and I can only remember drinking 2 or 3 times with Donald because he just wouldn't buy me anything to drink. But I'd been out with him a couple times, and then I got locked up again, and they sent me to Jessup for 6 months. And I prayed God it's my last 6 months of duty there. And I think this was really the turning point. And it was while I was there, Marty said to me, "You know, Polly, they're opening up a clinic in Annapolis." And Marty was the type of person, anything that had anything to do with drunk, she'd go investigate it. Marty was a tough gal, and she said, "I think you need some extra help. There's some of us that need extra help. Would you be willing to go?" And I said, "Yeah. You know, I just want to go to the nut doctor. I've tried everything else." Now, before this, like I said, I can't remember dates and times. I had been drinking, and see, Marty had brainwashed me. Polly, once you take a drink, don't call me. You didn't like you do today. And see, when I would get drinking, the last person I'd want to see somebody from AA because I felt they'd loused me up as it was, and I didn't want to run into any of them. But I was coming off of a drunk, and I was down Marty's house, and Miss Bloom, who was head of the reformatory then, made a special trip down to see me and talk to me. And she said, Polly, I talked to Dr. Turk, who is head of Spring Grove Hospital. And he is very interested in you coming up there. And she said, if you keep on drinking, you know, they're going to bring you back to Jessup. And I feel, and the parole board feels, that Jessup been the answer for you. Now, I was the type of person, any kind of kindness showed to me, you could do anything with me. Even when I was drinking. But if you crossed me, I'd just soon hit you in the head with bottles, look at you, too. So I thought, well, here's a man that doesn't even know me and wants to help me. So I agreed to go to Spring Grove. And I thought to put all the drunks on the same ward and all this. And I thought it was so nice of him to want to help me. So I told her I would go. So Marty took me to Spring Grove, and I was so sick. I remember her, because I used to say to her, you know, Marty, I still have a good time. You know, I'm young. She asked me, was I still having a good time? And I said, I don't guess I am, because I thought I was going to die that day. And I get up to Spring Grove and get checked in, and they just throw me on the ward with everybody else. And I was there for 3 days, and I thought, my God, you know, I am crazy finding myself in this place. So I told him I was ready to leave, and Dr. Turk sent for me, and he said, you know, Polly, if you had guts enough to sign yourself in here, you ought to have guts enough to stick it out. Now, you're only going to be on this ward for a few days, and we're going to put you on a better one. So then again, kindness was showed to me. So I said, okay, I'll hang around. I always say, you know, you ain't lived till you go to a dance in a mental institution. You know, here I thought, you know, there's really nothing wrong with me. But here I am sitting with everybody else trying to look the best of the crop over. Well, I stayed for 30 days. And I got out of there and I thought, my God, I need a drink all I've been through this past month. And I got out of that hospital, and I got so drunk. And there was another thing that used to always happen to me when I was drinking. Is I had then one false teeth in the front. And every time I got drunk, I lost it. So you know how sexy looking I was. And Marty used to say, you know, Polly, when you're going to take a drink, you ought to take that tooth out and leave it home. Because it costs you $25 before you even take a drink. Because I always lost it. I used to always lose my clothes. You know, I never knew till I come into AA what it was to put winter things away in the summer and summer things away in the winter. Because by the time the season changed, I'd always lost my clothes. Because I would be carrying them around in a bag, or if I was lucky and had a suitcase. And the drunker I got, wherever I was, I'd leave it. And then when I'd sobered up, I'd forget where I left my clothes. I remember one time when I first come around AA, we only had one meeting a week in Annapolis. And of course, I didn't get all this love and all that you get in AA now. I wasn't accepted. We had 2, 3, I call them howdy doodies. 2 or 3 gals in our group that, you know, alcoholics feel. They just wouldn't have anything to do with me. And I stayed sober my first year this way. I thought, the hell with them, Marty loves me and cares about me. And I'd go to that meeting once a week, and if I knew Marty wasn't going to be there, I wouldn't go. AA teaches you a lot of things, and I remember one time I didn't have any clothes, and I showed up at this meeting, and Marty said to me, the preacher to give her a box of clothes for me. And this one gal come waltzing in with 2 dresses draped over her arm. And it took me a long time to get over this. Anyway, she gave me these 2 dresses, and you see, I took those 2 dresses and threw them in the garbage, and I was in bad shape for clothes. Because, you see, she didn't bring me them dresses because I didn't have any clothes. She brought them so everybody in the group could say, isn't that wonderful, bringing poor Polly a couple dresses. I'm a believer you get back what you dish out. Anyway, after I did my tour in Jessup and went back up for my 6 months, Marty talked to me about Dr. Klinger. And I give him as much credit for where I am today as I do AA, because I'd have never made it without this man. And I started going to Dr. Klinger, and I started going to AA, and it seemed like with both of them together, I started getting a little bit together. I was around AA 5 years before I could even say my name. Because, you see, I felt so dirty and so under people, even drunks. And, you know, this is really going some when one drunk puts another drunk above them. But I would sit at them meetings in constant fear that they were going to call on me, and I couldn't say anything. And then they would sit there and use all these big words. I didn't understand what they were talking about. And no way would I let anybody know this because I felt they'd know how dumb I am. And Marty was a very well-educated woman. And I said to her, you know, Marty, they use all these big words and I don't know what they're talking about. And she used to have a habit. She always had a pencil and piece of paper writing stuff down. She said, Polly, look, when you hear a word you don't know, write it down. When you and I get together, I'll explain it to you. I said, my God, Marty, I can't say them, much less spell them. And so I would sit next to her. When I heard something I didn't understand, I'd nudge her, she'd write it down. And when her and I'd get together, then she'd explain it to me in 3rd grade English, then I knew what they were talking about. And this is sort of how I got this program. I think my first year of sobriety, the hardest thing I did was just not drink. It was a full-time job just to not drink. And it was the simple things, the program around AA. Like one day at a time, think easy does it. And Marty was, like I say, the type of gal, she called a spade a spade. And she was never afraid of hurting my feelings, even though a lot of times she did. But when I would think about it, I knew she was telling me these things because she did care about me. And you see, I couldn't do like a lot of people do today. You know, if they have a sponsor, you say something to them they don't like, they just fire you and get another one. Well, I couldn't do any of this hiring and firing because Marty was all I had. And if I was going to survive it all, it was going to be through this woman. And I knew it. And I remember making the mistake of saying to her, you know, Marty, I don't know why I keep getting drunk. It took me 5 years before I got a year of sobriety. And, well, she let me know. You know. I learned that I had to house clean in every department. You know, I didn't just come to AA to get sober. I come in here to clean my life up and maybe live and be a little bit like God intended me to live. And I've always had a real good reputation, and I'm very proud of this in AA, because I sure didn't have this before I got here. And it's something that I had to earn. I never knew what self-respect meant. Marty had to explain this to me. And when I started feeling good about myself, it was a pretty good feeling. She'd say things to me, Polly, you're going to find what you're looking for around AA. If you're looking for sobriety, it's here. If you're looking for something else, that's here too. But see, I was so dumb, and I was one that hung out in the bars. It never dawned on me to get a boyfriend in AA. And by the time I realized this, I had Donald, so I blew them a chance there. Because, I don't know, getting my life straightened out and getting tangled up with somebody, a man, wasn't getting didn't go hand in hand with me. I had to go all the way or not at all. She'd say to me, Polly, half measures avail you nothing. You can't half be an AA and half on a bar stool. You know, you got to go one way or the other, and I found this true. I thought a lot of things I heard around AA I didn't have to do. I thought it was very silly, and if, you know, people I got to do it, let them do it. But I kept getting drunk. And you see, the day came, I became willing to do these things. I had heard around AA we had to stay sober for ourselves. And like I said, Donald, who's my husband now, was stationed in Annapolis, and he just would not go with me if I drank. Well, I stayed sober 9 months for him. And he was getting discharged from the Navy. And he told me he didn't know what he was going to do, and he couldn't have the responsibility of a wife. And I thought, well, there you go. All this time I've been staying sober, and he don't appreciate it no more than this. So I got drunk the day before he got discharged to make sure he'd seen what he did to me. And I pray God it's my last long drunk. I started drinking in August, and I drank constantly to New Year's Day. And it's the only period in my life I can remember drinking that I didn't get locked up. Because, see, by now I'd really gone wacko. I'd go around imitating all the patients up at Shepherd Pratt and Spring Grove and all this. I used to pray to God that I'd walk out of a bar and a car would hit me. I wanted something instant to take me. I didn't want to suffer. But now I had very understanding parents. See, it never dawned on them to call the cops. They took me in and tried to help me. This is the way his mother and father are. And like I said, I just knew that I had lost him because of my drinking. But it just didn't matter to me anymore. I just wanted to get well. It didn't matter that I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to live, I didn't have any clothes, didn't have anything. I just wanted to get well and stop drinking. And I was sober a couple weeks down my sponsor's house recuperating, and I got a letter from Donald. He was back in the Navy, stationed in Norfolk. And he was wondering what kind of Christmas I had, and if I was trying to get my life straightened out again. And I wrote him back. I was back in AA and going back to Dr. Klinger. But I didn't tell him for how long. It was only 2 weeks. Because I thought if I tell him 2 weeks, he'll think I'm not sincere. And he started coming up to see me, and December the 22nd, we got married, and that New Year's Day, I had my first year of sobriety. I think the first miracle in my life was this program, and the second was Donald marrying me, because I never thought he'd ever marry me. And Marty had always gave me advice, Polly, wherever you go, you latch on to people that's staying sober. People that's going in a direction that you want to go. You know how to drink. Now, see, these things made sense to me. You don't need anybody to show you how to drink. And no matter, because Donna was in the Navy and she knew we'd be going around a lot of places. So no matter wherever we got stationed, see, I would latch on to people. God always put the right people in my path. But I had heard around AA, even though we don't drink, our disease progresses. I could not believe this. I thought, how can I be getting worse when I'm not doing it? Well, I was up in Rhode Island. Donald was on a ship, and I started getting resentful, and there was a couple gals. They used to use my house as a bar room, and I was a waitress every time ship went out. Because, see, I thought the quicker they got drunk, the quicker they'd want to get sober, and I could do this miracle with them. And I had older members in AA up in Rhode Island said, Polly, look, you better start spending more time with the ones of us that's thinking sober than the one that's drinking. And I resented this. I thought, Marty never give up on me. But you see, I never went to Marty drinking. So within a year, I'm walking to the liquor store to get me 6 beers and a half pint. was no doubt in my mind that I was going to do any controlled drinking. I went back to our apartment, and by this time I'd learned to drive a car. Both ways, I say, because when I was drinking, I always told people I could drive, but I could only go frontwards. Used to drive up and down the Ritchie Highway all the time. If I'd had to stop at a red light, I don't know what I'd have done. But everything went before me. I knew I was taking a gamble, losing Donald, because he wouldn't put up with me drinking. I knew he was going to kick me out when he came back, and I'm figuring out what me and my dog's going to do. But in 3 hours, I'm up in East Greenwich, going to the liquor store again to get me some more to drink. I sideswiped 2 cars. The police chased me 2 miles outside of East Greenwich, and I thought, here I go again. They took me and locked me up, and the policeman said to me, we're going to call you a cab and send you home. And I didn't believe him. I never had a policeman call me a cab and send me home. He said, but we're going to hold your car. The next day, I had to go to court, and I guess he was the captain. He said, I don't know how they ever released you last night, and I don't know why they never charged you with drunken driving. I said, I wasn't so bad. He said, well, go look at your car, and my whole windshield was busted. And I went to court, and they charged me with reckless driving. They took my license for 90 days, and I walked out of that courtroom feeling so grateful. Because, you see, I could have killed somebody. If somebody would have been getting out of them cars at the time I came by, I would have hit them. And I haven't had a drink since then. And I celebrated my 24th year last month. And you see, this taught me, this wiped the last crutch I had away. That even though I hadn't drank for a couple of years, I had got worse. I don't know, I had to do a lot of things I didn't want to do to get my life straightened out. And still have to do things that I don't like to do. One is standing up here talking. When we got stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, this is where I met my second sponsor, Millie. A lot of you know Millie and I. Yeah. You see, I sized Millie up for about 6 months. And every place Millie and Isaac would be, I'd listen to them. And I remember saying to her, you know, Millie, I told her what Marty had always said to me. And I thought we were going to be there a couple years, and I asked her, would she be my sponsor while we were in. And of course, she hasn't got rid of me yet. I never knew what real love was till I come to AA. I just couldn't understand people being nice to me or caring about me. You see, it took me a long time around AA to even be able to tell a guy, look, I love you. Because I used to think they think I got ideas. And I just wouldn't do it. But Millie is the one that really, really taught me about a lot of love. Because I used to just being with her, I'd feel so much love with this woman. And she's the one that really got me growing in the program. She's the one that got me talking to these things. Going to conventions, she'd say to me, Polly, it's extra icing on the cake. And I wouldn't want to go because, you know, I'd come to a convention and feel that lonely feeling would come over me. But Millie knew so many people and everybody coming up. I felt so important just sitting there with her and Isaac. And I would be very resentful. I'd think, I don't know why I let her talk me into these things. And then on our way home, I'd be so grateful Millie got me to go, because I'd come back feeling like $1 million. She told me you got to give love in order to get love. You see, I think it's a difference in being in AA and around AA. I think it's a difference in talking AA and living AA. Like my original sponsor said to me, you know, Polly, any 12-year-old child can work AA as long as everything's going your way and everything's fine. It's very easy. The time to see how powerful this program is when the bottom falls out. I don't know, sometimes I think I'm very lucky that I never had any religious training before I come to AA. Now, I thought of God when I was drinking. You know, when I'd be in a mess, I'd say, God, get me out of this, I'll never do it again, or I'll be more careful the next time. And all this I would do, and, but I've really got to know God since I've been sober. It took me a long time to be able to forgive myself. See, I believe God forgave me a long time ago, but it was awful hard for me to forgive myself. It took me a long time to feel comfortable around other women in AA because I felt everybody looked down on me. But like Marty said to me, you know, Polly, maybe you did yours out in front of God and everybody. Some of us did the same thing behind closed doors. That ain't make any difference where you're doing it. If you're doing it, you're doing it. I got a guy say to me one time, I was going to talk somewhere and he said, you know, Polly, keep it down tonight, because these stools, you know, these chairs get kind of hard. I said, did barroom stools ever get hard? He said, well, I used to sit on padded. Well, I don't want to tell you what my answer was. You know, it's, I don't know, I just don't ever want to become a big shot in AA. I always want to feel like a little pebble in a great big pond. Because I've seen a lot of people get big shot-itis and fall flat on their face. And, like I said, I don't understand one drunk trying to impress another one. Now, maybe I ended up on 9th Street in Washington and Balmer Street and the waterfront, but maybe you were lucky enough to be between two silk sheets, but we were both slipping and sliding around where we were at. I can remember in Washington, you know, I wouldn't even have a place to sleep. And I'd sit on a bench all night. And I'm able to talk about these things now, but it took me a long time before I could. Now you say, well, it isn't so bad in the summer, but then if it ain't hell in the winter. And I would pray to God they'd lock me up just so I'd have a bed to sleep in. You know, I believe God don't close one door, he don't open up another one. And I believe God isn't going to put anything in my path for one day to cause me to take a drink. Unless I want to. And you know, only you and God knows what's in your heart. And he has done nothing but open one door after another to me. I've learned around AA, God does things on his terms, not my terms. And sometimes I run into trouble here, because I want everything, like most drunks, yesterday. Like when I first come around to AA, I wanted to go to sleep and wake up and be sober 5 years like Marty. I didn't want to have to do the leg work. And, but I found out that it pays off. Because you are going to get out of what you put in it. And sometimes I think you get a lot more back, I do, than what I put in it. I could never repay AA for what it's done in my life. And I know if I got sober, anybody can get sober, if you just surrender. And like I said, get honest. Get honest with yourself. I know I had to get honest with myself before I could get honest with anybody else. And I see all kind of things happening in AA now. But see, some people teach me how to be, and some people teach me how not to be. God's got everybody around for a reason. And I learn from everybody. I know what I got to do to keep me in the middle of the road. I want to thank all of you for listening to me tonight, and God bless all of you.